sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. He is a chief executive officer at Expert Humans and partner and a future work forum. And with this we have Carolina Eo. I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. And second, she's also a partner with Future Work Forum and a founder at And Ahead. So guys, it's over to you. You can have the whole stage and you can start.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Carolina.
Yeah, so Michael, would you like to start first and then follow from here, because you have some slides that you would like to share?
Sure. Okay. Well, let me see if I can share screen.
Yeah. And then I can do my...
Yes, so you can share your screen, yeah.
Okay. So hello, everyone. It's lovely to be here, and thank you for the invitation. I'm joining you from Singapore. Can you hear me okay? Everything's okay?
Hear you well, Michael.
Okay, very good. So I'm just going to share a few slides, and Carol's going to join in along the way, I'm sure. Just to really get the conversation started, both of us are obviously very interested in the future of work, and both of us take a very active role in particularly looking at the human side of the future of work. And so I'd like to start by just sharing a little bit of data. You'll see here, this is one of many data sources that are available about the future of work. But the key message appears to be that, yes, indeed, many jobs will be lost. And I noticed on your case study, for example, there was flagging up the anxiety around AI and AI taking jobs from humans. So you can see here that the World Economic Forum back in 2016 said 133 million new jobs will be created, but 75 million jobs are likely to be eliminated. And then in a similar vein, a McKinsey Global Institute report says between 400 million and 800 million individuals could be displaced by automation and will need to find new jobs by 2030. So I think the exciting thing is that there will be new jobs coming into play. And it would be lovely to speculate a little bit on what those might be. Now, I wanted to share with you a little bit of work by a gentleman called Lee Kai-Fu. And you can see in the bottom there, that's his name. You can Google him, and there are a number of videos of him being interviewed. He's basically an entrepreneur, and he looks at investing in different companies that have AI as the main thing that they do. And what he created was this quite interesting graphic where he's attempted to plot the different types of professions that I think are very familiar to us. On the horizontal axis, you can see there creativity and strategy on one end, and you can see optimization on the other end. And then on the vertical axis, you can see, he says compassion needed at the top. So he uses compassion in quite a loose kind of way. Some of us may sort of say, well, maybe all jobs need compassion, but he's trying to make the point that where there's a high need for human-to-human contact, this is where he's talking about compassion is needed. And then compassion not needed towards the bottom of that vertical axis. And you can see, for instance, a truck driver. Does a truck driver need compassion? We might ask ourselves. Well, I mean, I've known some truck drivers and they've been very compassionate people. So it's something to get us thinking about how AI will affect all of us going forward. And so the other thing that he did was to try to, as it were, disaggregate and bring some clarity to what we mean by the AI-human interface when it comes to jobs. And if I start in the bottom left-hand quadrant, you can see that routine jobs are going to be very susceptible to automation. And so we can see a big green circle there for AI. On the bottom right-hand quadrant, you can see here that tools for creatives is the big thing in this quadrant. So this is where AI will be doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but there will still be a human plus AI interface. And if I just go back one slide, you can see here, can you see artist in the bottom right-hand quadrant there? When I saw that, I thought, Artists are very creative people. They're also very compassionate people. So why would it be there? And of course, what we know is that artist covers a whole range of professions through cartoonists, animators, people who work in gaming, producing games, for example, highly creative people, but they use AI all the time in their work. And then in the top left-hand quadrant, just to remind us, this is where, for example, we have, if you like, human wrapped around. And that's where, for example, an elderly companion, for instance, someone who looks after an elderly person, they will have various AI tools that they can use, but the primary focus of their work is to bring human comfort to the person that they're looking after. And then on the top right-hand quadrant, you can see there we have professions like social worker, CEO, etc. And if we go back to this quadrant, we can see here that this is going to be predominantly a human dominated area of our professions. So the social worker, very much human, and using AI to augment, if you like, or to run alongside the primary focus of their work. So Lee Kai-Fu has done quite a nice job of trying to disaggregate some of these things so that we can think of them in this kind of way. And I'll pause just for a second there, because Carol, I can see you nodding and making a few notes there. Are you okay? Would you like to make a comment so far?
Yeah, I think this is very true in the case of, I think as we move along and understand what AI can do and cannot do. I'm involved myself now with the AI project that we just got a grant from the German government as well. And for example, my project is how can we match individuals to the right jobs and to the right training for the skill set that is needed. And as we go through this process, it's interesting to see that of the categories that require compassion, require curiosity, which is linked to creativity here. So definitely, I think it's an important step for us to think what kind of careers can we build. But on the other hand, I also had a thought in mind, and this is something that I would like also for the rest of the group here to share, is that there is the phenomenon of portfolio careers, where the labels to the titles, and if you see on LinkedIn, all the different labels are now changing because we no longer know what to call ourselves. So you put like 4 different titles up there. And how can we then make this portfolio careers a reality that organization can understand how to structure? So I've seen organizations now, instead of putting titles, they look into the skills that are needed and try to match it to the individual and put them in different project groups. So thanks for sharing this. So it gave me a few inspiration as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Carol. Thank you. Well, I'll just move very swiftly on with a few other things before concluding this little slideshow. Carol knows this very well. I've been working in the area of altruism, compassion, and empathy in the workplace for the past 8 years or so. And I'm very committed to the idea of developing more human organizations. And I've created this little model, you could call it, which I call the ACE model, altruism, compassion, and empathy. And what this is about is, it's explained somewhat in a book that I've written, which is called Expert Humans, which is really around how can we develop ourselves to be as good at being a human as we are at being technocrats. So if we're a lawyer or an engineer or a scientist, a doctor, someone who is technically very, very advanced in the way that they can do their job, how can we add to that these very, very important human attributes? Well, for me, and as you can see, I've written in my book, the disruption that we're seeing now, the shift is clear. And I think that there's a huge opportunity for us as human beings to actually develop our own emotional intelligence. And as you can see, I've quoted from various reports, one from Accenture, one from the Aspen Institute. And I'd just like to beg your forgiveness to read this for a minute. Human skills are surging in the job market. And as companies rapidly adopt artificial intelligence and related technologies, some job roles will be done exclusively by humans, while others will be taken on by intelligent automation. But most emerging roles will be fulfilled by people and machines working together in the dynamic space which Accenture calls the missing middle. So this is the new frontier of work, if you like, that area where humans and machines are going to be working not against each other, but with each other. And similarly, these roles that we're now imagining are going to require us to apply what we call higher level human skills. So in most analysis of how skills have developed over the last decade, we see a huge advance in terms of, and I've put it in block letters here, more what we call socio-emotional skills. In other words, the ability to work with people in a very human way, and that doesn't mean avoiding conflict. It doesn't mean avoiding having very robust conversations, having tough conversations. Compassion is actually a very difficult thing to do successfully. But the point is, there's a huge opportunity here for us to dial up what it means to be a human. And as you can see here, just to underscore that, a quotation from Rachel Record, she says, the companies that do not associate AI with EI being emotional intelligence, are going to miss the mark, okay? So my final slide, just to sort of, I guess, bring us up to date a little bit, and also just to give you guys a little bit more food for thought, is this notion that hybrid work is inevitable. This seems to be the word on the street now. And one of the reports that's put out by, as you can see here, Edelman Data, it's a very, I think, a reliable kind of organization that does a lot of very good work. And you can see here, 73% of employees want flexible remote working options to stay. And 67% of employees want more in-person work or collaboration post-pandemic. So the challenge is going to be, how do we manage to reconcile some of these, if you like, conflicting ideas that people want? And as we go forward into the new world of work, the added very interesting piece, of course, is the generational difference. And this was flagged up in your briefing note around the case study around the future of work. How will Gen Z, for example, or Gen Z, depending where you are in the world, how will Gen Z react to this? And of course, currently we have 5 generations in many, many workplaces. So how is technology going to work for all of those people? And my last point would be, how could we become more human in the face of all of this amazing change that we're seeing now? And I'll hand back to Carol too, to invite your comments too, Carol.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. And I also, I think, also want to introduce, have the time to introduce, but let me ask Nurmit, I hope I didn't also say, wrongly, but I assume that all the groups here would also present about their findings in the cases that they've just looked into. That's right? So in terms of time frame, I probably will need like 5 minutes, but if you have lesser time, then I just skip my slides. So you let me know.
No, we have time. We have a lot of time. You can go on with it.
Okay, so I mean, then I'll just do something quick. I think I thought it's a good addition to what Michael has said, because Michael gave a very great, even for me, a good food for thought for the overview also of what happens looking into AI and how we could look into the important skill sets that are needed when it comes to the next steps as more and more technology will take over jobs. So I thought I could add in one slide, and I'll share my screen here, where we look into how we as individuals can be part of it. And I have a few slides prepared, but I think there's one tool that could be interesting because you were working on the business model canvas, right, before. So this will be something that we can use, not the business model canvas, but we call it the personal branding canvas. So can you see my screen right now?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Let me just put it on full screen mode. Just give me a second. So I think what is really interesting right now is that a lot of organizations, and Michael is a huge expert as you work with different organizations here, is that organizations are looking into purpose, looking into how we can support to solve the issues that the world face when it looks into SDGs. I think there are different work tracks also within this challenge. And the individuals that are looking as they graduate from university, as they look into finding work and experiences like many of you are looking into purpose. So before that, let me just briefly introduce myself. My name is Carol. I'm an Isaac alumni as well. I started from Isaac in Singapore back in 2002. And then I took my first traineeship in Belgium. And since then, for the next 2 decades, I've been working in talent management roles, one with AB InBev, which is the world's largest brewery, as well as also the another construction engineering conglomerate. Before now, I become a founder myself. So Isaac has a very deep meaning to my career, because that's how I went and lived in also 4 or 5 different continents and worked with different organizations. So in a nutshell, Isaac has been spearheading also or supporting me in my own career. So make the full use of all your time in Isaac here. And linking it to purposeful careers and organizations, in my own Isaac career, I have many great mentors. Also with organizations I work with that are connected to Isaac. And one of the things that we always ask is, how can we, find our career purpose from the start of graduation to the start of our first either internship, if we decide to do one, or in terms of career-wise. And as you build a business, what's that tool again? Sorry, I'm just losing my thoughts here. As you build your business canvas, you can also build your personal branding canvas. So I'll just share this very quickly as one slide. So this is a tool that was created by an Italian organization. What they say is that, we spend so much of our time looking into how we can support the organizations as they continue to grow. But what about ourselves? So as you go through the business canvas, looking into the different suggestions that you have for how can Gen Z move forward when AI and technology comes in place, think also about how does it affect yourself as an individual. So usually where I start is at the end, so the bottom right. It's not very intuitive on the structure wise, but where do you want to go next in terms of what you want to solve, in terms of what are you curious about, what are you feeling that you can put your time into to solve one of the challenges around the world. So in terms of, let's say, if you are, I made one example here, so that's something that you could take a look as well. And this was specifically for the Isaac group as well, right? So if you're someone who's looking as to be a project coordinator in a green project, right? So in the area of circular economy, then you need to know your target audience as well. So who are the ones that are involved in this project? Who are the ones that are hiring for this project? Who are ones that will tell you what skill sets are needed for this project, as well as who are the ones that will tell you where are the technology advancements right now that AI is creating either disruptions or next steps for. And the most important thing is, who in the Isaac network can you tap on for this product process as well? So in the future of work, a lot of this self-preparation and self-thoughts that we need to lead our own career is getting more and more important. As Michael said, there's now the missing middle. So we cannot rely anymore for organizations to tell us where we can head next. And then looking into, what is our unique selling point? How can we communicate that unique selling point by showing them what are some of our story? So I jumped a bit here. If you've heard of Ikigai, I have a slide on it. I can share it and you can do it later as well. What are some of the experience that you have from Isaac or beyond? Why should companies hire, and what are the benefits that you can provide to reach this goal? So this map should be done earlier than later, and then you use it with different individuals. But let me stop here. I will send this to Nermit, and then you can share it with the group. But I think it's good to also hear from the group here, what do you feel are some of the ideas to bring about so that use can be better, the skill sets can be better built and leveraged to the needs of the society.
Okay, so guys, does anybody have questions or want to ask how to go about this challenge, or what are you thinking? You can just share ideas and gain more knowledge and innovate on that and upgrade on that. Guys, either ask in question in the chat box, or you can just raise your hand.
I see someone was born in 2002 when I joined ISAC. It shows how old I am.
Yes, so we have one person. You can unmute. I cannot see your name due to this.
Okay, hi. So, first of all, I want to thank you for this very informative session. And secondly, my question is that can you elaborate on how the canvas and the plan you showed can help us in our case study for the future of work? What exactly are the expectations?
Do you mean the personal branding canvas that I just showed, right? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Let me put it back on screen again so that you can take a look. So I think as we evaluate opportunities, and Michael, feel free to jump in as well after this. As Michael has mentioned, companies no longer try or are looking into putting people into fixed buckets or just job descriptions. It will continue, right? This practice of job descriptions will not stop in the next, I think, decade. I don't know if you agree, Michael. But at the same time, when companies hire, they are looking for individuals who are also curious, who are looking into projects that challenge themselves, and who knows how to brand themselves with authenticity. And the more that we as individuals try to at least narrate that our brand to the organizations that we are going to join, or maybe if we start a company, to the clients that we are going to sell to, then the easier it is for them to help us or help whoever here that is going as a next step to tackle it. Because what happens is we can have different mindsets. One mindset is artificial intelligence is going to kill all the jobs. What are they going to do next, right? So that's not that's not something that we put then the control onto others. So a lot of cases when I was in talent management, people come to me and say, hey, the company is responsible for my career. What are you going to do next? And then my answer back is always that, no, you are responsible for your own career. We can be enabling that process and we want to support, but I don't know what you're curious about, what you're passionate about, what goals do you want to solve? Where do you see at least in the next 1-2 years if you don't have yet a long-term next steps? So frameworks like this as a start of the career, and this was shared with me with my first mentor when I was at ISAC intern, to think about that process earlier on. Then even if I don't have that answer, at least I have a framework with some points. And as I grow in my career, I can have 10 of this. It doesn't, there's no limit to it. Michael, do you want to jump in here as well?
Yeah, I think it's super important, for example, for helping you to define what your own purpose is. So, for example, when you're looking for work and you're thinking to join an organization, being clear on what you're looking for and whether there's a fit with the organizations that you're looking at. Or, for example, if you've had an offer of a job from an organization, we now have tools, thanks to AI, at our disposal where we can actually look into the culture of the potential organization that we're going to be joining. And coming back to the question that was posed about the connection with the future of work, I think it's really interesting to see how many organizations, the ones that are very forward-looking, are looking at every stage of what we call the employee experience. So right from the first engagement by the individual with the organization through the onboarding process into the learning and development stage when you're in the organization, into that phase of maturity with the organization where perhaps you're looking at perhaps moving laterally or perhaps doing a different piece of work, doing a different type of work with the organization, all the way through to exiting the organization. And even around exiting, when we think about the future of work, there's new language which is coming into play, which is, let's not talk actually about exiting. Let's use our creativity to talk about transitioning, for example. So many organizations now are beginning to get wise to the fact that if they have been able to provide a really good employee experience to those people, and this is something that requires empathy, it requires a lot of thoughtful approaches. What's to stop that person going away from the organization, maybe for a year or two? Perhaps they want to travel the world, perhaps they want to study something different, and then they'll come back to the organization. And of course, any organization that really has its finger on the pulse of what talent means will realize that having those people come back, I think the slang term is boomerang, right? Like the Australian boomerang. To have these boomerangs is a really good thing, because they know the organization, they're familiar with the culture, and now they're coming back with an even higher order of expertise. So that's why for the future of work, I think those organizations who become very sophisticated in terms of really understanding what it is their employees want are the ones that are going to win and be successful in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can add on quickly to that, Michael, which means also that the need for collaboration as a skill set is extremely important, because now it's not organizations, as Michael said, it's not just looking as an individual of the lifetime of an individual within the company, but also the employees that leaves and come back. And for the employee as an individual, you will need to understand how this process makes sense. How do we then promote ourselves within the organizations to continue getting new challenges that make sense, and how we can collaborate across various, even between companies, right? So not just in one organization, but now in the wider ecosystem. And the more we can do that as a skill set, the more valued we are, because then we look at the problem and the challenges rather than, what is my job? Which for me as an individual, this is really an exciting time. So I think for those who are looking for roles today, this is an exciting time as you go through this challenge. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Carl,
so we have...
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
I was just introducing, we have another question from Zanib. You can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask, first of all, I just wanted to clear that I didn't mean to imply that you're old. I just meant that it's really cool.
Oh, no, don't worry. No, my kids always tell me I'm very old. In fact, I'm going to be a grandfather in next month, actually. Yes.
Yeah.
So don't worry at all. Don't worry at all.
And by the way, old is gold, right? Someone said. So,
I was the one who said that.
I think we have no problem being called old. So yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to ask that there was a chart you showed in the beginning which had a number of careers and like artists and all that. So I was wondering, in that chart, where does surgery come? Like medical field, surgeons, general practitioners, psychologists.
Same question.
So,
great question. Can you guys see this screen? Maybe not yet.
No,
not yet. Okay. Let me just see if I can share it again.
Sure.
So this is the chart I think you were
yes,
referring to. Yeah. So let's just I'll see if I can get it on there.
You have an option in the down panel. You can see in the down panel the
Bottom
last right. Bottom right.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. So if I just go back. So it's this one that we're thinking about, I think.
Yes.
So well, let's have a think. So the profession is a surgeon, right? A surgeon, yeah?
Yes.
Yes. So if you were thinking about a surgeon, where would you put a surgeon on this quadrant? Any thoughts?
Can I jump in, or would you like to go ahead first?
No, please go ahead.
Go ahead. Sure. Give it a try. Give it a try. Where would you put the surgeon?
I think in the top left.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
Yes,
because
in the
they
top
need
left.
compassion, because they have to treat human beings, so they have to have compassion for human beings, and optimization because they need to be at their best all the time.
Lovely, lovely. And of course, they can use AI very successfully in their work, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
And I think we're even moving to the point where we can do remote surgery.
Yes, cutting edge technology.
Yeah, where you can be a surgeon.
Laser surgery also.
Indeed. I think your question is a lovely one, because you know what it throws up for me is some very interesting thoughts around the medical profession as one, and also the humanitarian profession as well. If I could broadly talk about the humanitarian area, it's really interesting to me in my research is that although there's an assumption that compassion is very important in these areas, one of the very interesting things is that we find that compassion is actually very, very much lacking in these areas, which may surprise some of the members of our team today. But what I've found is that compassion is not only important in terms of the patient, for example, or if you're a humanitarian and you're going to a disaster area, it's not only about being compassionate to the end user of your services, but it's actually about being compassionate to your colleagues as well. And what I found astonishing in my discussions with humanitarians is that most of them said we're actually not very compassionate to each other. Why do you think that might be?
I feel like they're very stressed out, and they're not aware of how uncompassionate, I don't know if that's a word, of how uncompassionate they're being to other people. So because of their stress, it's
their stress levels are very, very high. I mean, what's very interesting is that there are some medical programs in the world where the electives that they ask you to do as you're training to become a doctor or a surgeon is actually to take English literature courses.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, and sometimes people would say English literature courses, but I'm training to be a doctor. Why do I need to read English literature? And again, I don't know if anybody around the table, the virtual table, would like to sort of take a guess at why would learning English studying or reading English literature, fiction, let's say, doesn't have to be English, actually, it could be any language, but reading fiction, why would that be useful in terms of me developing my humanity?
To broaden your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Because fiction allows you to, like my teammate says here, Liba, that it helps in critical thinking.
That's absolutely right.
Your mind broadens, and you're able to think of situations that other people who don't study fiction or who are not interested in fiction, they're not able to grasp that.
Perfect. Absolutely. It's one of the best ways to develop empathy. In other words, to actively try to find ways to see the world from somebody else's perspective.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, we're getting some great comments in the chat too. You're able to put yourself in others' shoes, yes, and understand different perspectives. Absolutely. And going back to what Carol was saying earlier, about these human skills too, and the ability to collaborate. We know that one of the huge challenges of our times, largely what some might argue as a result of how we have to work now using this technology, for example, but mental well-being for people across the globe was actually not in a good state even before the COVID era. And some would argue that we're in even worse shape now. So if we can have doctors that can be empathetic and compassionate to each other, then one of the things we can see is that the end user, the patient, is going to benefit as well. So everybody benefits.
Yes, it's very important to be able to, like she mentioned just now, it's very important to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Otherwise, you're just living your own life and you don't realize how much impact your actions or your words are having on somebody else or their mental health, for that matter.
Absolutely. There's one caveat that I would put with this, and for those of you who are interested to sort of look into empathy in a bit more detail, there's a psychologist, he's Canadian, he's called Paul Bloom. I'm putting it in the chat. And he's written a book which is called Against Empathy, it's actually not against empathy. He's actually a very strong proponent of empathy. But he goes into great detail about how we need to tackle our bias. Because one of the soft underbellies of empathy is that we tend to be able to empathize more with people who look and sound like us. And so we need to challenge ourselves actively to try to go into communities, to find people who are absolutely not like us, so that we can develop our empathy, but that also we can be of service to other people as well.
Definitely. Thank you so much. It was really nice talking to you.
Great questions, Zainab.
Yeah,
Thank you.
questions.
Thank you.
I was reminded from this discussion because one of my favorite series these days is The Good Doctor. I don't know if you've all watched.
Oh, I love that one. I just started watching it.
And what it's going through my mind is how much, I think there are quite a few fans of the movie, how much the organization, the hospitals in this case, because we're talking about surgeons, then value performance versus empathy and compassion.
Yes, that's very true.
And I think we're going through a transition because I'm having, and Michael, we discussed this in our previous sessions together as well, that a lot of boards of companies we used to just look at profitability, revenue, etc., are now asking the questions, are we doing enough to solve the world challenges, right? So there are, I don't remember the organization that we can sign up to as companies where we pledge that we are a purposeful organization. And also then in the interview process for individuals as they go through the promotions or whether will we be promoted to the senior leadership is what do we stand for? And how can what we stand for as an individual match it to the organization's purpose? So linking, it's all linked also to how the future of work will evolve. Is that the performance-based driven is now no longer sufficient? Then what's next, and how we as individuals can move forward? So thanks for the reflection. Yeah.
And Carol also thank you, Zainab. And Carol also building on that too. I think the question of the world of work for Gen Z. I think what's becoming very clear from our studies is that there's a huge expectation on the part of employees. Gen Z would be included in that, but also some other generations too. They want to see their leaders speaking out about inequality, about sustainability. Yeah. And the fact is, if their leaders do not speak out about these things, and if they do not make a stand, for example, this is going to affect what we call the psychological contract between the employee and the employer. So I think we can expect, even in this age of digital transformation, a dialing up of expectation that employees have of their senior people. And it will all come back to the question of trust as well, which is another big issue that we have in our world today.
Definitely.
So maybe we can ask around the group here, what do you want to stand for? If you don't want to unmute, feel free to just type into the chat. one of the questions that I asked, which is kind of a link, is what are we irrationally passionate about? Irrationally passionate can also be linked to purpose. So I can start. I'm irrationally passionate about getting people back to work. That's the core of what I do today. Those who have taken a break, those who have, many moms out there, or even dads these days. But what is yours, Michael, and what is yours, Zainab, or Nimit, if you want to also share?
Well, I can say I'm irrationally passionate about fighting toxic workplaces.
Awesome.
That's it.
Awesome.
I guess I would be irrationally passionate about the importance of the identity of your culture. Like, I really hope I'm not being racist here, but I've always been very irritated by the fact that all Southeast Asians and all South Asians have been grouped into one category. Like each Korean, Chinese, Filipino, Singaporean, Thai, everyone has their own identity. Indian, Sri Lankan, Pakistani. And I think it's really important that we raise awareness about this, that I am this and I am only this. I'm not a broad category. So yeah, I'm really very passionate.
You don't want to be put into a box, because we all have unique skill set, personalities.
Exactly.
Awesome.
To be honest, I do not have as such, as in I'm not able to think about some irrationally passionate about. I am not sure, to be honest, what exactly say. Or so we have a couple of it's like in the chat box is this. There is sustainability, individuality, feminism. So I guess these are the categories of these students. I have one question, like in that itself. So I am pursuing law. So I am an undergraduate in law. So where does exactly that in the law comes in the bigger picture of that, the chart you showed, Michael, in which is it about the compassion, or is it about the creativity, or is it about the strategy? Like I was figuring out I was thinking a lot on this topic, and like, I was thinking, where should it go? And I'm not able to understand. So could you just go forward with that, like a explanation on that?
Well, I mean, I'll try. I've had quite a lot of experience working with lawyers, and of course, the legal profession is a multifaceted animal, I think. And I don't need to tell you that we have the whole gamut of criminal law all the way through to international trade law and all sorts of things. But I think if I was being very optimistic and positive about it, I think that the majority of lawyers get into doing what they're doing because they have a sense of justice. They have a sense that they want to do right in the world, and they want to help the dispossessed and the weaker people in our society to be able to have a voice. So straight away, I can see that there is a huge, what I might call ACE component, if you like, altruism, compassion, and empathy in there. So I would be opting in terms of, and I know I'm going out on a limb here, but I'd like to sort of think that the legal profession sits in the top upper quadrant, where you guys are essentially doing human work, but you are deploying AI in a creative way in order to be able to make your work even more valuable. So for example, we know that we can deploy AI to go through case law to look for evidence of different things that have happened in the past. And whereas in the old days, perhaps young lawyers used to spend hours and hours and hours reading through stuff, we know that AI can go through and pick out stuff that we then as humans can then look at in some detail. What I'd love to think is that, we often talk about, oh, I can't do that because I can't make time to do that. And we try to think of time as being some sort of finite thing. And I think sometimes, and maybe something we have to guard against, is this notion that AI is necessarily going to save us time doing things, and that it will give us an opportunity to do what we might call higher order work. Because the evidence so far is very mixed around that. So as a lawyer, it would be great, I think, if you were able to sort of stick with those principles of humanity and then use AI to be able to enable you to do your job even more efficiently, but at the same time, be able to have enough time to spend with actual human beings. Because my last comment on this is that, you know, in financial services sector, it's absolutely huge in terms of digital transformation. So we've got chatbots, you know, talking to customers now it's very normal, right? But I've heard from human resources people within the financial services sector that this idea that chatbots would take up all of the tedious, boring stuff and enable us to have more quality conversations isn't necessarily the case in many organizations. And so in your case study briefing where you talked about robots taking people's jobs away, I think there are some organizations that do see AI as a way to get rid of humans. There are some organizations like that, and we basically have to find out who they are. And the last thing I would say is that within financial services, quite a lot of people who used to be frontline bankers, you know, the tellers in banks and so forth, they find that their ability to touch the customer and to connect with the customer is being compromised by AI. So there are good things, and obviously there's collateral damage as well. So sorry, it's a long answer to your question, but
yeah, I got the yeah. Thank you for such a brief answer. And we have, I guess, one more question from Shrey. You can unmute and speak.
Hi, Shrey.
Hi. First of all, that was a really great presentation. And I had a question again. I just spoke about how, you know, robots may take over the jobs. So as a computer science student, I am quite interested in the field of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all that. So I had this question, like how AI is actually obviously helping and making our work easier. Like, for example, like you mentioned, chatbots. It has reduced customer experience. It actually helped a lot customer experience and other stuff. But isn't AI the same thing that will put us out of jobs? Because, for example, right now Tesla has, you know, almost perfected the software of a driverless car, which is going very good. So with that, we have a very high risk that AI can put out a lot of people out of jobs. Like recently, I was reading an article where almost 60 million people in the US were out of jobs because of coronavirus and AI. So what are your takes on this? Like, is it a good thing or a bad thing? I just wanted to have an opinion.
Carol, do you want to go first? And I've got some thoughts to share in a moment, but or I'm happy.
Yeah. No, I can, because it reminded me a lot of our conversations together on this topic. I think it's all a matter of speed, you know. So, sorry, there's some racing happening outside my street for some reason. I think change is inevitable. So people who are fighting change throughout history, we know that they're not going to succeed. What does matter is how do we catch up with that change? And when the change becomes so quick, especially now with COVID, that is not also increasing the speed of change because of this move to the whole virtual workplaces and virtual workforce. The people who are impacted, so in this case, the drivers that used to earn a living driving, would have to reinvent themselves much quicker. Now, is there a way to do that compared to 100 years ago when another pandemic happened, the Spanish flu, right? I think we are right now in a much better position. So I'm very optimistic in that sense, because right now you have technology that enables you with just a smartphone, have all the information in the world at your fingertips. In the past, we did not have access to global markets. So as organizations or individuals, in this case, people who want to find and earn a living can have access to, Asia, sitting in Europe. In my case, I'm in Frankfurt, Germany. Michael is in Singapore. So I could make a business collaboration with Michael as we speak in the session, or, the 14 of us here. But do those individuals that are impacted have then the skill set and the mindset and the ability to collaborate to make it happen? It really then depends on the support system that can also support. And this is where I think everyone needs to come together. So to your point, I think to bring back to Michael's one of earlier slide is, although jobs are lost, but there are much more jobs being created. And how can we as individuals, if that's your irrational passion, sign up to help people being displaced, finding a role back, then is something that I think the whole ecosystem needs to come together. So Michael.
Absolutely, Carol. I think maybe two things I'd like to share. One is on the driverless cars, for example. I think what we need to do is to think about what the ramifications are of driverless cars. I think for driverless cars, as opposed to driverless trucks, the story will be different. If we take driverless trucks in the US, you talked about 60,000 or so jobs being displaced. I think you're absolutely right. But the bigger issue with driverless trucks in the US is that US transportation culture, if I could put it that way, the hub and spoke of land transportation in the US is such that whole towns and villages, I think we probably are familiar with this in countries like China and India, and I'm sure also in Sri Lanka as well. Whole communities build up around the truck stops that truckers make. If we don't have human truckers anymore and trucks are completely automated and just run along tracks, more or less, run along roads and are guided by people sitting in one of the big cities in the US, for example, the question we need to be asking ourselves is, what are we doing to prepare for the collateral damage that kind of transition is going to cause? What are these people, what are these people going to do? What other work are these people going to do? So that's a big question I think we need to be asking ourselves. So I think we probably all agree around the table that we don't want to be throwing our hands up in horror and sorrow and thinking, oh, woe is us, we're all doomed. No, we've got to sort of start thinking creatively about how we can do things differently. That would be one thing. Second thing is this. I'm putting her name in the chat because you may have come across her before. Her name is Lisa Feldman Barrett, and she's done some very interesting work looking at human emotion. And I was studying her work over the past couple of days, so forgive me, I've got the recency effect going on here. But what was very interesting to me was that she has been able to show that in terms of brain chemistry, emotions are constructed because they are perceptions of what's going to happen. So you are anticipating what's going to happen. And this is where emotions are born. So what this means is that, when we sort of say things like, well, I could see on her face that she was lying, or, I could see that he was guilty because he looked like it. I could see it on his face. Actually, these things are totally impossible for us to see. We cannot judge these things. It's a fallacy, right? And so we've got the titans of technology like Google, Facebook, others. There are a multiplicity of them in China as well, who are doing a lot of work trying to figure out facial recognition and trying to be able to tell what emotions human beings are feeling just by looking at their faces. And I think this is a road to nothing, to be honest. And that's really good for humanity, right? But what we need to be able to do is to say, we need to be able to call these things out and say, AI can be very beneficial for humanity, but let's not pretend that AI can replicate all of these things that human beings can do. If we can't even tell to a high degree of accuracy what is actually going on in somebody's head, how do we expect a computer to be able to do that? Yeah. We are far away from that. And I'll stop talking now. Put one more source which you might like to look at in the chat as well.
Thanks, Michael. And I think, Michael, that's a very valid point that you're making. That because of the speed with the whole ecosystem that can be destroyed, really needs to be looked further into, so that it's not just relying on the public organization, but how we as private individuals, as private organizations can come in to make a stand. With AI, there is a lot of hype, but in fact, when you dig deeper, the technology of AI is not there yet. So there's a lot of fear mongering as well, right? So to say that, oh, AI can take over this and this and this, and then you realize that just to put that technology up, there's thousands of people that are being hired to put it up. So how can we, so one of the things that I'm advocating for as an individual is, I don't have a tech background. I studied business, majoring in finance marketing, but I would love to have a seat on the table when decisions are made when it comes to how AI is being used. And if we are not on that seat, the 14 people here today, then we are not in the whole decision-making process to evoke change. So I would really add on to that to say that, okay, it's going to happen, technology will happen, change will happen, but which seat do we want to be on the table to make sure that it moves in the progress or in the process that is sustainable, healthy, looking into well-being as well. So.
And Carol, if I can just do a little bit of advertising here, not for me, but for a good friend of ours. I don't know if you guys can see this. Maybe you can't.
It's the Zoom technology that is stopping.
Yeah, we cannot see the book.
It's like you're not seeing the book. Yeah. Okay, no worries. What I'll tell you what it is. It's called Compassionate AI.
Yeah. Let me
Compassionate AI.
You can put it in the chat box. That'll be easier.
I will indeed.
Amit Ray, or is that the same person? No.
Momat. I'll put it in the chat. Jean-Luc Momat. So while I'm putting it in the chat, I'm just going to make the point that AI can be used and can be harnessed to help the mental well-being of people as well. So compassionate AI.
Yeah.
That's the author of this book. It's actually a very thick book, you can probably see here. So it takes a little bit of reading, but it's a very interesting book indeed.
Put it on the Kindle, yeah, immediately. And Sri, what do you think after all this? What are your thoughts? Yes, I'm sure you have given a lot of thought about it, so I wanted to also hear your thoughts.
Yes, we should hear your thoughts too.
Yeah. So, like how, it's always been like how we're progressing very fast. For example, let's like you mentioned, you had a business and a financial background, right? And like, for example, like how much I know about Google Sheets itself, and the different business tools which can automatically predict what kind of chart to use. Like, basic stuffs are getting automated. For example, your smartphones, smart fridges, smart TVs, and now we even have smart vacuums, right? So there's technology in almost every little thing. So, and I was discussing with my friend, we had read this book about by Isaac Asimov, obviously I Robot, how the whole robot uprising may come soon. But so again, it is, it's quite possible. Like even in the book, they mentioned that the AI could, obviously it couldn't match the, intelligence, emotional intelligence, and the whole social qualities of a human being, but it did to an extreme, right? And obviously it can be a threat in the future. So again, it was just, here and there, like if it's going to be a whole risk, is it going to be a threat to us or not? Because obviously once AI is there, like it does create more opportunities, but but it creates opportunities in more tech-based stuff, right? In order to, automate, a system, you need engineers. And for that, you need to study for 4 years in deep detail about it. But what about the other sectors, like, which obviously we need, for example, like drivers too, and other sectors. So it was quite, I wasn't quite clear about it. So, but yeah, I have a better idea now. Thank you.
It's a valid challenge
Absolutely.
that we all feel also fear for. So yeah, I think it's a great question.
I guess we can have another question from Zarina.
Hi, Zarina.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm Zareen. I'm from Isaac in the Philippines. I wanted to thank you for this really insightful talk. I think it'll help all of us in our case studies and of course, upskilling ourselves in the future. I actually like the career canvas because I think it will really help me because I myself am very confused about my future. So yeah,
Free to
I'm
reach out.
personally.
Yeah. I said, sorry to interrupt. Feel free to reach out whenever you have questions.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm personally passionate about continuous improvement, improving myself, and also helping others improve. And so, with that, my question is regarding the future of work. So, with my previous research, I think there's also been a trend of continuous upskilling, and so that you can be at par with how the market is changing. And so, my question is, what specific things should we focus on in terms of upskilling ourselves, especially
Yeah.
during these times that the job market is getting more competitive. So yeah, thank you.
Michael, you want to go first?
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I think apart from those attributes that I was mentioning earlier around us becoming more human, I think there are a number of jobs that will require us to gain specific skills. One of the places that you could go to sort of see what the latest skills required are would be LinkedIn, actually. If you look at LinkedIn top skills for 2021, you'll find a list there of skills that are going to be needed going forward. Now, of course, there's always a health warning with these things, isn't there? Because even as we upskill ourselves and train ourselves, things are moving very fast. So we always need to bear that in mind. One of my best friends, who's the same age as me, his wife was a Spanish language interpreter in the US. She retrained as a radiologist. And I didn't like to say to my friend, well, one of the things I know is that radiology, or the job of the radiologist, is going to be, it is currently being supplanted by AI, which is much more accurate than a human radiologist, I'm told. I didn't like to say this to my best friend because his wife had spent, the past 4 years retraining to be a radiologist. But he said to me, I know what you're thinking, Michael, and that is that why is she trained to be a radiologist when this job is actually going to probably be completely replacing humans within the next 5 to 10 years? And he said, that's because she's going to retire in 5 years. So she doesn't need to worry about that anymore. So we have to kind of bear these things in mind, I think. Things are moving very, very fast.
Yeah.
Carol, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there are 1,000,001 things we can learn and upskill. And I'm constantly thinking, even myself, what should I be upskilling next so that I don't become obsolete, right? So, and I'm not retiring in 5 years, so I have quite a many years to go. I think it's always important to start from the root, So start from the question, who do you want to help? What problem do you want to solve? Because then there's a whole world out there to solve that problem. So let's say, with your friend Michael, if I can take her example, she wants to become a radiologist because probably she wants to help people get better, right? It's part, I assume that's part of the medical profession. So having said that, how she can help people get better or healthier or disease-free or illness-free, there are so many different, if I draw a mind map, so many different lines that you can go to, and then think about the part of what are we good at, right? So we all have certain strengths and skill sets. So in my case, I have this passion to support individuals reach their potential, partially inspired by Isaac, 20 years back. And then my skill set are really in the talent management area. So I find an intersection. So I will ask, Zirin, what is yours? Because then you are not also then competing with the other 99%. You're just really focused on that 0.01% to say, I think that I can solve the problem of female or gender equality, because someone said about feminism. Then my skill sets are, I'm good at managing events. Being Isaac, that's one of the skill sets. then the next part is then where is AI going to take over in solving this problem? So if AI is looking into helping female, looking into the education sector that supports, getting females educated in certain parts of the world, then how do I become a complement to that, or lead, or become the one to make decisions for that? Because then we are always ahead of technology and being a part that shapes technology rather than chasing behind technology. So there's no one answer. It takes, I think, at the early stage of our careers, we don't really know. But the important thing is to keep trying, keep learning, keep growing, keep getting more gray hairs as we go through that process. And then we will figure out somehow and leverage that whole group of individuals that are here. So the ones that you do, your case study with, they become I like to call it our personal board of directors to help us lead this process. And now Michael and I have the privilege to become part of it as well. So that's my answer. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, Carol, when you stop learning, you stop living.
Absolutely, because we stop being curious. And Michael and I have this passion for curiosity that we wrote an article of that I think we need to get it published at some point.
I think so, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Curiosity, that's one of the big skills that you guys are going to need going forward in whatever walk of life you choose to go into. Always be curious.
And if we stop being curious, it's time to look for something that makes us curious again. Yeah.
I think so.
Oh, so definitely I will read that. When you publish it, the curiosity is that one thing makes us going every time. And I think we are at the end of the session. So it was a really wonderful space, and it was really curious, and the doubts were, I guess, clear for all. And you cleared my doubt also, like, so in which parameters you should actually grow with. And so that's it. So thank you, wonderful. For the delegates, we have a short 10 minutes break, and then we'll go to the closing plenary, and the link will be sent in the Telegram group. And thank you guys to coming on board with us, also for you two also for doing this amazing job. And thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Yeah, lovely to meet you. Have a great day wherever you are.
So much.
Session. Enjoy. And
thank you.
Being curious throughout.
Yeah, and I want to be in Germany, to be honest.
So, agree. The world is in your hands. So feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice Sunday.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a lovely Sunday.
Catch up. Thanks.
Thanks, Carol. Take care. Take care.